Seilevel presents 2-minute models, decision trees, and decision tables. Have you ever found yourself in an elicitation meeting and hearing the following? If the user does A, the system should do X. But if the user does B, then the system should do Y. And if the user does C, well, you get the picture. Chances are you've probably heard a stakeholder presenting business rules and requirements in this if-then format. But once you have all these rules written down properly, what do you do with them? How do you ensure that you're not missing any? This is where decision trees and decision tables come in. Decision trees and decision tables are RML models that allow the user to visually trace the decisions and outcomes in complex logic. Or simply put, they show how a user or system would determine what action to take given certain variables. Well, that's great, you say, but how do they work? How do I actually make one? Decision trees have 3 basic shapes that come together to show branches of complex logic. They have diamonds that represent decisions, boxes that represent outcomes, and lines that represent choices that a user or system could take. Here on the bottom, you see just a simple decision tree that has 3 decisions that each have 2 choices, leading to 4 outcomes. So let's put an example. How does this work? How would this work in real life? Let's say you're with your family, and you need to figure out something to do for the weekend. Well, you have 3 options. Well, we're going to say you have 3 options. You could go to the beach, yay beach. You could go to the museum and learn something. Or you could stay home and watch The Lion King. But how do you decide? There's one determining factor in all of this, the weather. If the weather says it's sunny, perhaps you're going to go to the beach. But if it's cloudy, maybe you don't want to go to the beach because it won't be as much fun, so you would choose to go to the museum. And if it's rainy, maybe you just don't want to leave the house at all, and you decide to watch a movie. Well, this can be modeled simply in a decision tree, where your decision is, well, what's the weather forecast? And then your 3 options are sunny, cloudy, or rainy. And then with your outcomes. Decision trees give you a visual way to represent these choices, and they're easy to review. However, this simple example doesn't really do it justice. So, for another example, do you remember those Choose Your Own Adventure books from when you were a kid? Or perhaps reading them to your kids? These Choose Your Own Adventure books present the readers with choices every other page or so, where the reader gets to choose the direction in which the story will go. I took one of these books, the Antimatter Formula, and modeled it into a decision tree, which we can see here. This tree is very large. It shows every decision a user could make in this novel. However, zooming in to view just a part of it, you can see that you can show every decision and what the outcomes are. You can even color code these decisions based on the outcomes and show quickly which outcomes come from which decisions. Tree, you can see the complexity to which decision trees can grow. You also saw color coding outcomes. However, this tree alone is very difficult to ensure that every possibility was created because it's so large and you have different branches. You only show the decisions that have outcomes. Well, this is where decision tables come in. Decision tables show the same information as decision trees, but in tabular form. In the table, there's a column for each distinct set of decisions and choices a user can make. The top left is for the decisions, and the bottom left is for the outcomes. Here, this is the same example as in the decision tree, where you just have 3 decisions that lead to 4 outcomes. This, however, is a condensed version. For the mathematically minded, you can see that this could quickly lead to a very large table, because each set of choices and decisions get its own column. So to have the proper number of columns to ensure that you do every decision, you would have 2 to the n, or in this case, 2 to the 3, which would be 8. We only show 4 here. So let's see the decision tables for the same 2 examples we had for the decision tree. First, the family weekend. Pretty simple. You have the weather forecast, then your choices are sunny, cloudy, or rainy, and then you have your 3 choices of beach, museum, or movie. Here, we put slashes in each of the boxes that don't exist, just to make sure that we've considered every outcome. However, this table is not very informative. Now when we move to the bigger Choose Your Own Adventure table, shown here, this is only a piece of the table, and I know you can't read it, but there are a lot of decisions which lead to many, many rules. But there's only 4 basic outcomes. It's much larger and more complex. Now I've condensed this again with the lines so you don't see every combination, because if you did, it would be even bigger than it already is. However, it is easy, well, somewhat easy if you could read it, to choose an outcome of the 4 and then trace back to see what decisions you could make. This leads to some advantages and disadvantages of trees or tables. So which one would you use? Given a choice. Decision trees are prettier, they're easy to walk through with stakeholders, and they're easier to make because they follow, your thought process. However, they're hard to trace backwards if you want to choose an outcome and go to the decisions, and it's difficult to ensure that you have every combination considered. Also, there's the size. As we saw with the Choose Your Own Adventure book, it can get huge, 6 pages or more. But on the other hand, for decision tables, they can show you the quick view, everything not necessarily in one page, but everything really quickly. They have backwards traceability where you can choose an outcome and view the choices. You can run some statistics if you only have a couple outcomes, and you can ensure completeness by having a column for every single choice. However, again, these get big, they're harder to review with your stakeholders, and they're just not as pretty. So in reality, you should use both together. Possibly decision table first, and then decision tree to walk through with your stakeholders. So there you have it. The next time you hear a bunch of if-then statements coming from your stakeholder's mouth, consider using decision trees and decision tables. If you want to learn more about decision trees and decision tables, look at Chapter 16 and 17 in Visual Models for Software Requirements.